Welcome to this DDI CADcast What's New series. Today we're covering what's new in 2014 SOLIDWORKS Composer. I'm Michael Nolte. Here's a quick list of the topics that we're going to be covering. The change between SOLIDWORKS Composer and 3D VIA Composer, so that occurred this past year. Wrapping, one of the new features, auto hide annotations, coordinate labeling enhancement, PMI cross highlight, interoperability. This is just the file types that are able to be imported now. We'll quickly cover the API changes, and then we'll go over the new changes to the system requirements. Let's go and dive straight in here. So some of you may or may not know that Dassault actually is the parent company of 3D VIA. They're the parent company of SOLIDWORKS and also CATIA of other companies. So one of the things that Dassault decided to do was actually switch the Composer program from 3D VIA over to SOLIDWORKS. So it changed all the development, the tech support, all that falls under the SOLIDWORKS hat now. So they did make some minor changes in it. One of the things is they do follow the same service pack release cycle, or fairly close to the SOLIDWORKS service pack release cycle. So I went to the help and about here. Currently I'm showing service pack 1 of 2014. Service pack 2 I think is due shortly out for SOLIDWORKS, and Composer will probably follow suit fairly shortly, if not at the same time. So they did do the rebranding. One of the other things though that they did is they also changed the licensing. So if you're on standalone serial number, you actually activate and transfer a license just like you do in SOLIDWORKS from the help menu. If you're running a networked version of Composer, it's actually also done with the Solid Network License Manager, just exactly like SOLIDWORKS. So it's done in the same format, so it makes it a lot easier to do licensing. So be aware that the licensing has changed. If you do have any questions, obviously give us a call on the DDI support tech line and we'll give you a hand there. I do want to point another thing that changed on the SOLIDWORKS side of things. When you do a file save as, we actually have the option for Composer. Well, let me point out something. So if we go into add-ins, and again this is if you're running SOLIDWORKS and Composer on the same machine. So I go add-ins, turn on the Composer add-in. And Composer is part of the 2014 install. So if you have Composer and SOLIDWORKS, you just put in both serial numbers and installs it both. You don't have to do separate installs. They do also allow you to not install the CATIA translator, so it actually speeds up the Composer install quite a bit. So I get the Composer add-in turned on, go File, Save As. And when I go to save it, I can change my type to the Composer format right from here. Notice there is no option button just yet. It does go off of the default document properties in Composer. So you want to get those settings set correctly first time, and then start doing the save as directly from Composer or from SOLIDWORKS. Alright, so let's dive back into Composer here. Alright, first one is they wrap annotation text. This one's quite useful. It's being used for the annotation labels and callouts, so just annotation labels and callouts. But if I select one of the labels over here in my properties, I'll go and undock that. I get an option to enable the wrap functionality, and then I get a wrap width that I can set. Or you'll notice that there is a new handle in the upper corner there that I can actually drag and allow it to auto wrap there. So I can actually set this. You can also store this in the styles, so I could say I want all mine to only be 40, and then it'll force that to stay consistent throughout all my labels that I create with a particular style there. Alright, next option here is the auto hide annotation when anchor is hidden. Okay, so what does that mean? It gives us an extra auto hide. 3 different options. There's a disable, There's a standard and there's a advanced. They do mention that the advanced is time consuming, so that option does slow it down. The advanced, what that one does is it actually allows if there's an associated item to this particular part, then it'll auto hide with that as well. So standard is kind of the straightforward. Let's go and set it to that one. And the idea behind it, let's see here. And get that to attach here. And then I'll go and set that to standard. There we go. So now if I actually grab that particular part, hide that actor, then that annotation will actually hide as well. If I come back and I show that particular actor, then that annotation shows up again. So that's essentially what that new item or the auto hide. So kind of handy, that way you don't have to constantly go back and show those and hide those. Alright, next item, the coordinate label enhancement. So what that is if we come in here and we add a coordinate label. So I'm going to just drop one of these in. Hit my escape to turn that off. When I select that particular label, I actually have the ability of adding text to it. So if I come down here to the text field, currently it's set to none, but I could come in here and say actor, and then it'll actually bring in the name of the actor, or I also have access to the meta properties as well. So if you use those, that might be handy. Again, coordinates, keep in mind that they do attach to wherever you're pointing at. They're more of as a reference, but it's a good way of kind of pinpointing, but now you can actually tell which part it's currently attached to. You can also change which level it's pulling from, so you can either do the part itself or the body itself, the subassembly, or the top level, depending on what level you're diving into. Okay, next item is PMI cross highlight. Alright, so to do this next one, I need to switch back to SOLIDWORks. And I'm going to turn on some surface bodies here that I've created. Okay, I'm going to save that, and I'll save the assembly. And we're going to go and do an update. So I'm actually going to save out an update file. This is kind of a different workflow, but it works actually quite well. So rather than pulling the SOLIDWORKS assembly in Composer for an update, I'm actually just saving out an SMG file from SOLIDWORKS. Alright, so we're going to let it finish doing that. And once it finishes, we'll switch back to Composer, and then we'll actually pull that in and do an update. So again, PMI is a product manufacturing information. So it's essentially allowing more information as far as where those show up in the particular model here. Alright, so we're going to pull that update, and again, this is why we use Composer, so that we can pull those updates real easily. And I want to make sure that I import free faces because that's our surface bodies. Okay, and let's go and reset our views. Yeah, I caught myself in my own hiccup there. So yeah, because I did the update, if you're aware, but yeah, default document properties, it was set to not import free faces. So when I saved out that SMG, it didn't bring in the free faces. So I'm actually going to go and do an update with the SOLIDWORKS assembly. But I guess it's handy to see that other methodology. Alright, so I'm going to go and grab the entire motor. And when I import, I do want to do the free faces there. Okay, and again, because I saved that SMG out the other way, it's not going to do the update that way. So it's going to load SOLIDWORKS in the background there and do our conversion. So the other workflow that I was going through, the reason that's kind of handy is you might be right in the middle of working on SOLIDWORKS assembly, and then you might as well just spit out the SMG. But again, make sure you make your default document properties set up correctly, otherwise it's going to do what it just did to me. Alright, so this should be done in a moment. Alright, there we go. We've got our surface bodies. Okay, so that's those little red discs there. Alright, so where this option shows up at is if we go File, Properties, and Document Properties, or you could also set in Default Document Properties if you're going to use it every time. But you come down to the Selection group, and then there's the PMI cross highlight. So we actually have the ability of changing the colors for those particular items. In fact, you know what? Let me go and bring up the help file here, or the release note, so you know where I'm pulling my information from. They've actually got a good example here. One sec. There we go. So essentially, those surface bodies on the outside there, whether you want them visible or staying on top, selected opacity, or picking out a particular color there. So you actually have the option of changing what those are doing. My surface bodies aren't actually intersecting, so it makes it a little bit harder to work with that. So let me see if I can get a scenario here. Let's simplify this so my system can keep up with it. And let's go and make those changes here. So document properties. Let's go uncheck on that. I don't have a good example, but you kind of get the idea there. Alright, let's flipping back to the PowerPoint here. Interoperability is essentially, it's just saying what versions you can now bring into Composer 2014. So we can do CATIA V5, Release 23, and of course SOLIDWORKS 2014 files. The API stuff, if you do use the API to write to SOLIDWORKS Composer, there's 4 new calls, so if you do use that, definitely take a look at the release notes and you'll get some more information on that. Last item is the system requirements, so let's go and switch over to that. Alright, so I'm going to go support system requirements. This is solidworks.com, and I'll go into the SOLIDWORKS Composer system requirements, and note that the 2014 doesn't support Vista or XP, so it's kind of following suit with SOLIDWORKS that we're not supporting Vista or XP. Licensing also, a lot of the older operating systems are getting dropped off for the support of the new versions. As far as general requirements, they really haven't changed. Again, they do still recommend a OpenGL graphics card. There is no list per se for Composer just yet, but essentially any business professional or anything that lists OpenGL acceleration capability should work. For more CADcast topics, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DDICAD or our tech blog at ddicad.com/techcenter. Thanks for watching.